Okay, so in our previous video, we tried to define what teaching is, and I hope you can write down what your perception, your understanding of teaching is, the way you would define what teaching is. And as you do that, hopefully you have been able to reflect on your understanding, your presupposition of what content is, what the teacher is, what the student is, who they are, and their roles in the process of teaching, and the ultimate goal and purpose of teaching. Of course, it is a process, and it is you as a teacher designing learning for the students, creating that environment for the students. For what purpose? For the purpose of students learning. And I would add to it, okay, I'll leave that one and we'll move to this one. So now I would like us to talk about learning. What is learning? How do we understand learning? Again, I would like you to pause for a minute, write down what you defined for learning, how you defined learning is, and at the end of this discussion, we'll see what, how your definition for learning may change. Okay, so pause it, write down. Okay, so hopefully you've done that. Now, when we talk about learning, again, just the way we did it for teaching, I want you to take a minute, pause the video, write down what comes to your mind when you think of learning. What are the different words that come to you, descriptors, for learning? Okay, hopefully you came up with a list of them. These are some of the lists that you find on the book. Again, these are the things that Phil Reyes found from his survey of different people there. So when they think of learning, they think of understanding, listening, absorbing, applying. I like the absorbing, you soak it in. But that's an understanding that we have. We say somebody has learned it when that person has absorbed it. But it doesn't matter what happens. Changing behavior, growing, applying, widening my horizons, discovering, changing attitudes. These are all beautiful words, okay? So what is learning? There are these terminologies here, and I want you to reflect on these ones and on the ones that you have already written when you think of learning. Understanding something, listening, absorbing, applying knowledge I have acquired, changing behavior, growing, applying here again, widening my horizons, discovering, changing attitudes. So what are some of the words that you keep thinking of? Which are the words that are more sensible to you? So considering all the words that were mentioned here related to learning, write down your definition of learning. So looking at some of the words that we looked at related to what learning is, would it be different? See if you can incorporate some of these words that you just saw now and see if you can write a definition and see how it compares to the definition that you have written at the beginning. Okay, let me just give you a minute to do that. Okay, so hopefully you've done that. It may be different, it may not be different, but sometimes when we think of learning, especially coming from some kind our context, we feel like learning is being in the classroom, sitting there, the teacher saying things for us. So the fact that I'm in a classroom, I may say I've been learning, but really the fact is no, that's not really what learning is. I hope you understand it is more than that. We would say I have learned when I'm able to take in whatever I received, I'm able to practice it, master it, and it has an implication to the way I live my life. I would say I've learned it when that thing is transforming me. And we talk about holistic transformation. It's not just transforming my head. If I have lots of information and if it has transformed my head, making my head so big, and that's a temptation for us in theological institutions. It's possible for us to have a big head, big knowledge, and not necessarily be impacted in our attitudes, be impacted in our behavior, in the way we do things. So we talk about learning being transformative, being transformed, and being transformed holistically. That is in our knowledge, in our attitude, and also in the way we behave, in our ability to put things into practice. Okay? So some definitions of learning. Learning is the process of acquiring knowledge or skill through study, experience, or teaching. It is the process that depends on experience and leads to get this one, leads to long-term changes in behavior potential. I would like to underscore here the idea of long-term. So learning is not that which you have been in a classroom and you've sat in, and when you do the final exam finishes, it has to be something that is long-term. And it definitely is something that involves the student being engaged in it. Another definition is learning is a relatively permanent. Again, I would like to emphasize this idea of relatively permanent. It's not forever. Of course, we lose some of the things, especially if we don't use it, but it is a relatively permanent. It doesn't stop at the time you finish your exam. You cram everything for the exam, and as soon as you finish the exam, it's all gone. That's not learning. It has to be relatively permanent change in understanding resulting from experience and directly influencing behavior. So I experience it, it's permanent, and it is influencing something that influences the way I behave. So if I'm, especially within the Christian circle, within our biblical institutions, churches, if I am being exposed to the Word of God, I expect the Word of God not only to fill my mind, but for it to flow down to my heart, transforming my attitudes, and then transforming the way I behave. It has to transform my life. The Word of God has to go through me as I go through the Word of God. It's not enough for me to just go through the Word of God, memorizing the Word of God, unless the Word of God also goes through me and transforms me. Another one is learning results in a change in the behavior of the learner as a result of the experience. The behavior can be physical and overt, or it can be intellectual and attitudinal. I would say it has to be all of them. I would say it has to be holistic. Yes, I can learn some things cognitively. Yes, I can learn some things that affect my attitude. Yes, I can learn some things that are things that we do in our behavior. But for the most part, if I need to be transformed in the way I do things, I need to have knowledge. I need to have that knowledge, cognitive. But what I know has to affect the way I feel about it. I need to be convicted about it. When I have that conviction, then that flows into the way I behave, into the way I do things. If I have the knowledge about something, and if I believe here I really need this, then I will be able to use it in the way I do certain things. So it's all interrelated. Of course, there might be some things that remain in the head, but then, for example, people talk about maths. Maths is a mental thing, but not really. If I have maths in my head, if I have gained the knowledge, but if I don't love maths, then I will not apply maths in work, in doing things. I may not even master it properly. But if I know it, if I'm convinced by it, if I love it, then I'll be using even maths. So to do certain things with it. So you can talk about many other things. Learning results in a change in a behavior that results from experience and practice. This means it's important what this is saying. As you can see here, it has to do with experience and practice. And it is also something that Phil Ress said as one of the factors. That's the third one. We learn by practicing it. When the students are engaged, when the students do things about it, they learn, not just by listening. We learn as we do things. Okay? So observation, how does your definition compare to the different definitions that are given, or to the way that we talked about what learning is? So what I would like you to do is I would like you to just write down what would be your definition based on the discussions that we had now, your reading of it. What would be your definition? How would you define learning for you? And also emphasize what would be most important focus of learning. Okay? All right, we'll stop here and then we'll move to the next part to look at the relationship between teaching and learning in the next video.